Good evening, everyone. I'm going to call to order the December 1st, 2020 reorganization meeting of the board. I'd like to call the roll the following holdover board members. Mr. Bedard.
Here.
Mr. DeFranco.
Here.
Dr. Etlin.
Here.
Ms. Jordan.
Here.
Mr. Lapidus.
Here.
Mr. Needleman.
Here.
Ms. Sarsfield.
Here.
Ms. Slapinski.
Here.
Dr. Taratusky.
Here.
Since there are no newly elected or re-elected members, all the board members have been previously sworn, and if present, are seated for this virtual meeting. Continuing to notice of the reorganization meeting. Pursuant to Section 402 of the Pennsylvania Public School Code of 1949, as amended, you were informed that the reorganization meeting of the School District of Springfield Township Board of School Directors would be held on Tuesday, December 1st, 2020 at 7 p.m. Virtual platform. Directions for the connection to the participation in this meeting was published on the district's publicly accessible website. The agenda for the meeting would include the election of the president and vice president of the Board of School Directors. The notice of the reorganization meeting was also advertised in the Ambler Gazette on Sunday, November 15th, 2020. Are there any comments from the public? Hearing none. Nominations for temporary president. Are there any nominations for the temporary president?
I would like to nominate Mrs. Gretchen Slapinski.
Are there any other nominations for temporary president? Hearing none, and as the nominations are closed, as Ms. Slapinski is the only candidate nominated, I move for Ms. Slapinski's election of the acclamation for the position of temporary president. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Ms. Slapinski, you have the chair.
All right, thanks everybody. So now we're going to move on to nominations for president for the ensuing year. Are there nominations for president? I would like to nominate Dr. Karen Taratusky. Are there any other nominations for president? Okay, hearing none. As the nominations are closed and Dr. Taratusky is the only candidate nominated, I move for Dr. Taratusky's election by acclamation for the position of president. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. Okay. Thank you. Congratulations, Karen.
Thank you very much. I appreciate again the vote of confidence of my colleagues on the board, and let's move forward. I would like to propose nominations for vice president. Are there any nominations for vice president at this time?
I proudly nominate Jeff Bedard as vice president of the school board.
Thank you, Ms. Jordan. Are there any other nominations for vice president? Okay, seeing none, then the nominations are closed, and Mr. Bedard is the only candidate nominated. I move for Mr. Bedard's election by acclamation for the position of vice president. All those in favor say aye.
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 All opposed? Okay. I would like to announce that there will be a regular board meeting following this meeting. The agenda was posted on the website. Are there any other comments from the board at this time? Okay, seeing none, are there any comments from the superintendent? You're muted, Nancy. It's okay.
You'd think I'd know after all these board meetings.
It's okay.
I would just like to take the opportunity to congratulate Karen and Jeff. I guess it's congratulations for taking this on again. It is quite a responsibility, and the fact that no one wanted to run against either one of you is a sign of their understanding of the challenges of the role, particularly this past year. As we all know, it's been quite challenging, but the two of you have been able to guide this board and its decision-making with a firm and steady hand. And I believe that you will continue to do so with Dr. Yannicone at the helm as superintendent, and help and support her as she grows into her role. So she is indeed fortunate to have two experienced board officers who will be working with her as she begins her tenure next week as superintendent. So again, congratulations, Karen and Jeff. It was an honor and a pleasure to have you both as my last board president and vice president. So thank you for everything you've done to support me as well.
Thank you, Nancy. We've appreciated your support and your leadership through the district. I know I have, anyway. Thanks. Are there any public comments? Okay. At this time, we will adjourn the reorganization meeting. And we will move to the virtual board meeting of the Board of School Directors of the School District of Springfield Township for December 1st, 2020. Welcome to everyone who's attending. A reading of the mission statement. The mission of the School District of Springfield Township is to educate and develop all students as learners and citizens who are high achieving, resilient, and responsible in a changing global community. Roll call, Mr. King.
Mr. Bedard,
Here.
Mr. DeFranco,
Here.
Dr. Atlin,
Here.
Ms. Jordan,
You're muted, Ms. Jordan.
Here. Sorry.
That's okay.
Mr. Lapidus,
Still here.
Mr. Needleman,
Here.
Ms. Sarsfield,
Here.
Ms. Lipinski,
Here.
Dr. Taratuski.
Here. And at this time, I'll ask for any public comments on agenda items. If you wish to speak, please use the hand raise feature. And if you're called on, please share where you are located in the township. Okay. Mara Floor.
Hi, my name is Mara Floor. I live on 807 North Fairway Road in Glenside, Pennsylvania. I'm a senior at Springfield Township High School. I'm on student council and I'm a co-captain of the swim team. As a swimmer at Springfield, I've won the state championship and committed to Penn State University to swim next year. I could never have accomplished this without the training and support of all of my high school teams. I'm asking that you vote yes to our winter sports tonight. Our school has had a very successful fall sports season, both indoor and outdoor. Our families and students are committed to following all rules and safety guidelines to ensure that we have a chance to practice, compete, and connect with our teammates and coaches. Even though I did not play a sport this fall, I followed all rules to ensure that my brothers and friends had their fall seasons, and now it's my turn. Please vote yes to give me and my teammates the opportunity to practice, compete, and connect. We promise to follow all safety guidelines and to ensure a healthy and safe winter sports season for all athletes in Springfield. Thank you.
Thanks, Mara. Finn Call.
Dr. Taratusky, Finn has an older version of Zoom, so I will have to promote Finn to a panelist to be able to speak.
Okay, thank you.
So give me just one moment, please.
Sure.
Finn, you'll be, your Zoom session will restart as this happens.
Hi, I'm Finn Call. I live on Clive Road in Orland. I'm a senior at the high school. I've been a student athlete all 4 years. I played on the golf team this fall. My teammates and I were committed to following the safety measures and guidelines put in place. I'm proud to say that we had a COVID-free season. And I think it's important that the winter athletes are given the same chance to practice and compete. I'm looking forward to competing in basketball for my last year. And as seniors, we're already missing out on so many experiences. And I think it's important that we get this chance to play our last season. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Finn. Okay. Joanne Cawley.
Hi, my name is Emma Cawley. We live on 1206 Susan Circle in Orland. I'm a senior basketball player this year. I've done sports all 4 years at the high school. And I just want to say we wanted one last chance to play with, for me, basketball is a second family to me. And I won't be continuing in college, so it would be really great if we could have one last winter season. We will wear face masks to and from practice, distancing at practices, during water breaks, not sharing water bottles. I was a cheerleader, and I saw that fall sports were very successful, including boys water polo that won a small school state championship, and field hockey was very successful as well as the other sports. It's good to have some structure in our life right now. And also it's healthy for us to be able to go to practice to let some steam off after a long, stressful day at school. So I also believe that if football players can practice and play in close contact, then the winter sports activities and sports teams can do the same. Thank you.
Thanks, Emma. Okay. Are there any other public comments at this time on agenda items?
There's nothing in the chat and no more hands.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. Well, let's move on. We'll move to the swearing in of our new superintendent. And we have the Honorable Judge Thomas Branca with us tonight. Judge
Good evening, everybody, and thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here to swear in the assistant superintendent and the superintendent. And as I've said last time I was at the meeting to do this, I want to thank all of you on the school board for your hard work and in sadly what's often an unrecognized tough task, and it's been particularly tough this past year, and thanks for sticking with it, and thanks for your hard work. It's truly appreciated. Education of our children has never been more important than it is now. So with that, I'll swear in the assistant superintendent first and then the superintendent. So where is Miss Johnston? Oh, there she is. You're muted. I think you need to unmute.
There you go.
Right. There you go. I'm going to ask you to raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Damian Johnston,
I, Damian Johnston,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support, obey, and defend the Constitution of the United States
that I will support, obey, and defend the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of this Commonwealth,
and the Constitution of this Commonwealth,
and that I will discharge the duties of my office with fidelity.
and I will discharge the duties of my office with fidelity.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Damian.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Damian. We look forward to working with you.
You too.
Congratulations.
All right, Dr. Yannicone?
Here I am, Judge Branca.
All right. I don't see you. Where are you?
If you switch to speaker view and then say something, he should be able to see you.
Hello, Judge Branca.
Ah, there you go. All right. All right. Raise your right hand, please, and repeat after me. I, Mary Jo Yannicone,
I, Mary Jo Yannicone,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support, obey, and defend the Constitution of the United States
that I will support, obey, and defend the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of this Commonwealth,
and the Constitution of this Commonwealth,
and that I will discharge the duties of my office with fidelity.
and that I will discharge the duties of my office with fidelity.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Mary Jo.
Thanks, Dr.
Best of
Hacker.
luck.
Congratulations, Mary Jo. Welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Tusky.
All right. I
Thank
think
you.
my duty is done, so I'm
Thank
going
you,
to
Judge.
thank you all again, and take care of yourselves.
All right,
Thanks,
you
Judge
too.
Branca.
Thank you.
Everybody be
Stay
safe.
well. You
Be
too.
safe. Yep.
You too. Okay, we will move to approval of the minutes. November 2nd, 2020, interim Zoom meeting, board minutes G, and November 17th, 2020, regular Zoom meeting, board minutes H. Is there a motion?
Motion.
And a second.
Second.
Any comments or questions? Okay. Mr. King? You're muted.
As the motion has been read and seconded, all in favor say aye.
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 All right.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
Administrative report, Dr. Hacker.
Thank you. I'm just going to share my screen. As I noted before for everyone, we have a number of presentations this evening, and we're going to try to zip through them very, very quickly. I know we have a number of people who are attending, who are in the audience, and my guess is they're not as interested in the vote on the preliminary budget as they are with the vote on winter athletics. So we're going to try to get to that as quickly as possible. So as everyone knows, we always start with our mission statement, because after all, when we construct the budget, it really is about what our mission is as a school district and how we educate our students and what our goals are for that. And our annual budget process allows us to pursue certain goals that we have in our district in order to meet the obligations that we all have for the education of our students. This year, more than ever, given the mostly virtual environment that our students have been in, trying to provide a quality educational program for every single one of our students, regardless of their need, has certainly been a challenge, but it is nonetheless our #1 and premier goal. And again, with COVID, the social and emotional welfare, as a couple of our own senior students just recently articulated, is also at the forefront of our concern this particular year, as it is always, but never more so than now in the midst of a pandemic, when students are really unable to have the connections that they normally are able to form with their peers. There have also been limitations, as we all know, on the extracurricular activities, which again, as some of our senior students mentioned, are so important to them. As one of our students just mentioned, that's my second family. So we know that having a wide array of activities in which many students have interest is critical in order for our students to develop holistically. We also know that it's critical to have safe, secure, and well-maintained facilities, and now more than ever, clean facilities that have the appropriate Personal protective equipment is more critical than ever. And finally, we know that having a well-trained staff is really paramount, particularly in these times when they've been called upon to do extra duties in light of the fact that they are trying to teach virtually as well as in person. So all of these goals are even more critical during the times of COVID-19 than ever before. We also know that any budget has to not only reflect our obligation to our students, the goals that we have for our students, but that there are sometimes competing priorities. We can't do everything as much as we try, and we know that different constituencies will have different priorities about what they view as important. So our responsibility is to try to balance all of those responsibilities and to try to do the best that we can to represent the needs and the interests of every group of constituents that we have. So this is taking a look at the current status of the budget. And as you all know, I'm always fond of saying that the preliminary budget really is more or less a guesstimate of where we are at this time. We have a lot of work to do between now and when the final budget is going to be presented. The good news this year, in the year of COVID, is that the Pennsylvania Act 1 index is significantly higher than it's been for the last several years. It's now at 3%. And unfortunately, even though it is higher, we are going to be able to actually raise less money because of the decrease in revenues, which I'm going to again talk about shortly. So because the preliminary budget is at such a high rate at this particular time, which is a little over 6% based on our current estimated costs for things, we still have a very significant deficit, and I wish Dr. Yannicone and her new business manager luck as they try to erase as much of that deficit as possible in order to get to a final budget that hopefully is either at or below index. And that certainly will be a challenge this year in a year of decreased revenues. So this really outlines the process that we use. There's a significant amount of planning that goes into effect in order to be able to formulate our best guesses in terms of what our expenses are going to be. We have to do a lot of planning for staff requests and needs, as well as upcoming retirements and how that plays into the budget. We will soon be approving a new one-year extension. Hopefully we'll be approving a one-year extension on our support staff contract, so that has to get figured into the budget, as do all of our other remaining contractual obligations. Our building principals will be hard at work looking at the number of students who are coming into their schools in kindergarten next year, 3rd grade at Erdenheim, 6th grade at the middle school, and 9th grade, in order to be able to plan for those numbers and the needs of those students. We also are going to have to wait until the spring in order to get a better handle on our healthcare and other costs in order to be able to formulate what our expenses are going to be. But in the meantime, we do our best to be able to compile the estimates that we have for our local, our federal, and our state revenues that are coming in. So this is what we project at this point, that our total district revenue will be approximately $61.5 million. And as everyone can see from this, the bulk of that always does come, unfortunately, from the burden on local taxpayers. As you can see from the federal dollars, most of which are in our entitlement grants, there's really very little money in comparison to the total budget that we get from the federal government, and even from the state government, very little money that comes in compared to what we must make up through our local taxes. So the lion's share of the burden is always, unfortunately, on our local taxpayers. And as you can see from this chart, and I took it back only 4 years, you can see that revenues do have to increase over time in order to help us meet increasing expenses. And just like your own household budget, where household expenses continue to go up each year, whether it's paying for heat and electricity or water or your food bill. The same is pretty much true in a school district. We just have more line items in our budget. The decreased number this year in terms of anticipated revenue is based on the fact that we anticipate, and we mentioned this when we did our final budget presentation last year, that of course revenue collection will be down. And there are a number of reasons for that, most of which of course is related to the influence of the pandemic. And this gives you a little bit of an idea of where we were with our final budget in 2020, 2021, and where we are currently with our estimated expenses and costs in our preliminary budget. And as you can see, some of the costs have actually gone down a bit. They're noted over here in red, and other costs have gone up. So you can see in the budget codes which areas have gone up a little bit. Salaries and benefits, of course, make up the hundreds and the 200s. Over in the 300s, that's where we pay for a number of our professional services, such as our auditor, our legal fees, our architects, and so forth. It's also where we pay the IU for any special education students who avail themselves of the services there. It's where we pay for our substitutes and some of our consulting fees for professional development as well. The 400 level, which is also going up a bit, is maintenance and repairs and our property services. The 500 other services, which is going up slightly, includes a number of our insurances, any tuition to charter schools. We're still working on that to determine whether or not we've lost any more students to charter schools for this current year. It doesn't appear there's a significant difference, but we still want to make sure we take a look at that. It's also our phone services as well. 600 and 700 are pretty self-explanatory, our supplies and equipment. Obviously, with schools being closed this year, we've been able to really hold the line in terms of the supplies and equipment that are needed, and we anticipate that will continue into next year because our revenues are down. 800 and 900, this is where our interest and our principal are categorized for the debt that we have taken on. And you may recall a number of years ago when we began our building projects, we said that we were going to incorporate any of the debt into each year's budget so that other than the budget itself and any increases that taxpayers felt related to the regular budget, they would not be seeing other impact based on the debt that we were taking, and we have held firm on that. And this just gives a little bit of an idea in the chart of where the money is going, and as you normally hear me say, the bulk of our expenditures are always on salaries and benefits because after all, we are a human capital business. We rely on all of our staff members in order to be able to provide the quality education that I described for you in the previous slide. So over 70% of our budget goes to the salaries and the benefits for our staff. And as you can see, the slice of the pie, a little over a quarter of the pie that goes to other areas, those slivers are quite small by comparison. So even when we make cuts in those areas, it really doesn't have a significant impact, unfortunately, on the overall budget. Enrollment is a critical aspect of what we are looking at when we talk about our budget, because obviously we have to ensure that we have significant funds for increasing enrollments. And as you can see over time, we have increased enrollment significantly in the district. This goes back to the year 2012, 2013. And as you can see, some pretty significant numbers. Now, obviously this year, Enfield has an additional grade and Erdenheim lost a grade, which is why you see the differences in the blue in those numbers. But nonetheless, what you see is a difference going from about little over 980 students to almost 1,200 students in those years since 2012, 2013. At the middle school as well, you see a jump of approximately 125 students. And then, of course, at the high school, you see another increase of about 100 students. So all of the historical data that we collected years ago through Montgomery County in order to project future enrollment increases over time. And I believe this coming year, 2021, 2022, maybe the last year of that projection, they've all come true. They did a phenomenal job in terms of assessing the data at hand through census data, home sales, births in the county, and so forth. And it has held true in terms of the steady increases. So when we see more students, not only do we see about a 25% increase in the last 10 years, but that requires and necessitates more staff that have to be hired. The number, unfortunately, of economically disadvantaged students has risen significantly as well. That means they have need for additional supports that perhaps they don't have within their own homes. We've certainly seen that as the result of COVID-19, having to supply technology to students who may not have, for example, internet access in their homes or other devices. The number of English language learners, although across the district seems like a small number, it has nonetheless increased significantly over time, also necessitating the hiring of more staff to work with those students and to help get them on track with their learning of the English language, as well as translation services for their families so that their families can have access to events in the community as well as in the district, and so that they can attend meetings and be able to understand what is taking place. Our current student with disabilities population is approximately 430. We have a number of associated expenses in order to support the needs of those students as well. Obviously, with our updating and additions in our facilities, I spoke about that before, we have significantly more expenses, particularly when you think about a brand new school like Enfield. Even though we've been able to incorporate the debt into the existing budget, we have a larger school. It requires more cleaning services as well as supplies. And that's just one example of where you get increased expenses when you update your facilities. And again, we have talked about the increased mental and emotional needs of our students. And God willing, if Dr. Yannicone is able to start off a brand new school year with everyone back in school, I'm sure there will be increased needs that we will discover amongst a significant portion of our student population as the result of the sacrifices that have had to be made this year with the academic programming. So what we see as the result of COVID-19 and the financial situation of a number of members of the community is that it will be increasingly more challenging this year to be able to collect all of the real estate revenue and taxes that we normally hope to be able to anticipate. This slide shows you that we anticipate certain decreases as a result of either people not being able to pay their taxes, paying delinquent taxes, earned income taxes down as many businesses and individuals are unemployed or have to shutter their doors. Obviously, interest on the typical amount of revenue that we bring in will decline if the revenues themselves are declined. So it's a tough year for many of our families as well as many of the businesses in the community. And the result of that, unfortunately, looks like close to $750,000 in terms of decreased revenue that at least so far we can project we will be losing. So it's a tough year, and we have more expenses that we probably can anticipate we will have to account for as we look towards finalizing the budget for next year. This year, again, because so much of our time was virtual, there was a lot of money that wasn't spent. We had some furloughs, some staffing that were not being paid as the result of being on furlough. We will have those staff members back next year, hopefully. We will have more substitutes as a result of the fact that staff members now don't have to take sick days as often when they are working from home. If they have a cold, they can usually power through. They can stay home in their own home and not have to worry about going outside. We'll have more busing next year because busing will be an everyday occurrence for all of our schools. We may need more tutoring services for students as the result of lost academic time this year. And that includes ESY programming that we were not able to provide at the same level this year. There's a potential for legal fees as the result of the services that we simply were not able to provide in the manner in which some of our special needs families were able to anticipate or expect. And there are a number of things that we put on hold this year as a result of COVID, including bringing in many of our consultants, holding professional development for staff, and of course, our curriculum and revision and development work, which we put on hold as well. So hopefully next year we can resume a number of those things, but there will be a cost to that. And that, of course, will have to be figured into the final budget. So that's our budget presentation. I just want to stop and take an opportunity to commend Mr. King, who also, like me, will be retiring very shortly. But we both felt it was very, very important before turning the reins over to two brand new individuals at the helm to be able to prepare the preliminary budget based on what we see at this point. Obviously, there will have to be a lot of sharpened pencils between now and the remainder of the year as both Dr. Yannicone and Ms. Michaels come up to speed in terms of learning about our budget and what is typical and what is extraordinary. So I just want to take this opportunity to thank Mr. King not only for his work with me on preparation of the preliminary budget data, but all of his work here in the school district since it's my last opportunity and last board meeting to be with him. Ken, obviously, you know you hold a very special place in my heart. You keep me sane and you keep me on the right track. And you've been the voice of reason in my head these past 7.5, 8 years. And I just want to thank you for all the work you've done with our auditors, with our finance committee members over the years, and the manner in which you help everyone to recognize that this budget is really a function of the students in the school district of Springfield Township. Ken has never ever forgotten that these are not just numbers, that they represent the work that we do for our kids and for our families and our staff. And I commend you for that, Ken King.
Wow, I thank you. So, would you like to go over the details that make up all these numbers, Dr. Hacker?
Only if you can do it in 30 seconds or less.
I appreciate those kind words. And what is amazing to me, if I may throw something back at you, all of these numbers that I look at in detail, the way you can summarize them and communicate these numbers in ordinary language, not Ken speak, is amazing. It really simplifies it so people can understand what goes on behind there and what's important in the budget. I appreciate working with you for all of these years. My sister is also a Nancy. So oftentimes it's almost like we may disagree sometimes like siblings. However, it doesn't get me very far to disagree with Dr. Hacker. So. But I appreciate all the effort and certainly your stewardship and I think, making me a better BA to understand more what goes on in the classroom, the schools, not only you, but even all the administrators and other directors to really understand what happens on the ground. Not just back looking at numbers and knowing that the ultimate goal why we are all here is for the students and the families. We all have different pieces of it, but that's the primary reason why we're all here. And we should never forget that. So thank you.
Thank you, Ken. And I know this is your last board meeting as well. So we all wish you great luck and hope that you will stay safe and hope that you will now, like me, have time to do all the things you didn't have time to do before because you were so busy living in the world of spreadsheets.
Well, I appreciate that, but I also don't have excuses. So now I have to get that bathroom done. I got to paint that room, finally clean out the basement. So I no longer have that excuse, but thank you. And same to you.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions about the preliminary budget as presented or have any additional comments before I move on?
Somehow I did not, I'm sorry,
No,
Gretchen,
that's
go
okay.
ahead.
I've said thank you for the many years of making the budget presentations feel sane, as Ken said, because that is one of the things that has most impressed me with you, Nancy, through all these years, is just how you can really make it so that we can understand what's going on, and the transparency with our public is appreciated. So
thank you, Gretchen.
And enjoy it, because that was your last one.
Yes, it was.
Thanks,
Somehow yeah, no problem. Thank you. I missed that this is actually Ken's last board meeting. We should have had a bigger celebration for him, but I think the budget presentation is a fitting send off for the last board meeting for the BA. So, and yeah, just wanted to check with board members to see if there are any questions or comments about the budget at this time. I actually did have one question, and it's regarding tax relief. And I do know that there had been some plan for tax relief support through the Commonwealth, and that there was some money available through coronavirus funds or funding, I guess, from the federal government. But I understand that that is not going to be provided this year. I'm not sure how that affects us and what funding we do get as tax relief from the state.
So I can answer it from the perspective of the grants that we get from the government with respect to some of the things we have to put in place, such as personal protective equipment and things that are related to COVID. So there have been several grants that we have been fortunate enough to have gotten through the state as well as the federal government, and even Montgomery County, as I believe I had notified the board previously, had contributed a substantial amount of money to each of the districts in Montgomery County from a grant that they had received, which was really a generous donation, so to speak. And we've been using all of those funds for technology to assist our teachers with virtual instruction, microphones, headsets, additional laptops, iPads, and so forth, as well as PPE, amongst a number of other things, cleaning materials, and so forth. So those are the grants that we've gotten in the district, which have been extraordinarily helpful. Unfortunately, they are dwindling. We've been spending the money, and some of those grants will shortly run out, and that may necessitate more expenditures from our own general budget funds. I don't know if Ken can answer the question about taxpayer relief for individuals in the community. Ken?
Sure. I believe, Dr. Taratusky, what you're referring to are the property tax relief fund that was established back, I guess, when Act 1 went into place. that is funded primarily from revenues from gambling. We receive every year around $1.8 to $1.9 million that we receive, but we turn around and give homestead rebates to the taxpayers every year, roughly $370 per year. So it's not, even though the money comes to us, it's not our money. The number of parcels that are determined to be approved homesteads, you divide that total 1.9 by that number, and each taxpayer or parcel gets $370 reduction from their tax bill. What happened this year is, due to the state having funding issues due to COVID, they were concerned that they would not be able to come up with the full entitlement to the school districts. So they tried to use CARES funds that they received to fill that hole. In fact, what happened, we usually get 2 payments, half in August and half in October. The October payment, we did not receive all of it. We only received, I think, maybe about a third of it. They tried to fill that gap with their CARES money. They were not allowed to do that. It was determined that that was not eligible to do that. However, we are due to receive the additional 2/3, I think the beginning of next month. So I believe that's what you might have been referring to. So we have been made whole for 2021.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I just felt it was important to know, if we do get, I know that there's always questions from the community with regard to taxes, and just wanted to understand whether there was some tax relief for that. I know there's been questions about tax this year based on services that were or were not provided. So I just wanted to clarify that for those that were listening.
So that's for this year. So we're
That's
good
for
this year.
Mhm.
Next year,
Not sure. Understood.
Do
Are there-
yeah, go ahead, Karen.
I just wanted to know if there were any other questions or comments. That's all. Go ahead, Nancy.
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen again. So there are new requirements in place, and as Dr. Taracheski knows, this has necessitated her having to sign along with me as superintendent a new document that has to be submitted to the Pennsylvania Department of Education, which is called an attestation order. And the reason behind the order is for the State Department of Education, along with the Pennsylvania Department of Health, working together to ensure that when schools make the decision to open, that they are doing so by following certain very critical protocols in order to prevent the spread of COVID-19 within the school setting. And so those protocols require schools to attest to the fact that they are doing certain things. So when there is an actual case that we learn about with the student, we are required, if we learn that the student has developed COVID, to put in certain procedures relating to cleaning and disinfecting the schools, ensure that contact tracing is taking place, and also ensuring that the individual or any individuals with whom that positive individual has come into contact with, that the individual is going into isolation and that those in contact are going into quarantine. There are also new procedures regarding when school districts' buildings have to be shut down. So that's what this is about. So this is actually language that is quoted from the Secretary of Health, This presentation, by the way, along with the preliminary budget presentation, will be put up on the website, so the links will be active. And this is what was in the joint statement issued by Dr. Levine, the Secretary of the Department of Health, along with our new Acting Secretary of PDE, Noe Ortega. So obviously their goal is to try to mitigate spread of the disease, and they're calling upon superintendents to take certain actions in order to ensure that that happens. So this is what this actually means. As I said, it's essentially asking superintendents to attest or affirm that they are going to comply with these recommended procedures and protocols. And this includes a universal mask order. Now, fortunately, in the school district of Springfield Township, we already have a universal mask order. Everyone coming into our buildings is required to wear a mask at all times, other than when they are putting food into their mouth. We're also required to follow certain school closure procedures in the event we have any positive cases of either students or staff. Now, I'm not going to read through these models, but essentially there are two instructional models. One is we are open. We have an in-person option, and regardless of whether it's hybrid and we have students coming in on certain days of the week, or whether we have 100% of our students coming in 5 days a week, the same rules apply. The other option, of course, is where we are currently, a virtual option. So therefore, these two options are going to require that I sign off, and by the end of this week, Dr. Yannicone will sign off, attesting to the fact that we are in one of these two options. We're either virtual or we are at some level in person. And of course, as I said, if we are in person, we must ensure that we will be able to comply with what that requires. This chart will also go up on the website, and as you can see at the very bottom of the chart, Montgomery County is currently in the substantial mode of transmission within the county. And what that means for us, based on the top of the chart, is if we have anywhere from 1 to 3 students or staff, starting on day 1, assuming we go back to in-person instruction on Monday, December 7th, who come down with COVID, these are the considerations in this box that we must implement. We are able to consider altering our schedule, which means we could shut down again if we felt we needed to. We have to do certain things with respect to cleaning, and we have to work in conjunction with our Office of Public Health in order to have them conduct contact tracing and to direct individuals to quarantine. Fortunately, we do all of those things currently. In the middle of the chart, you'll see what happens if more than 3 students are noted to be positive within the same school building, and that does not have to be in the same classroom. There are specific orders for closing schools down. Now, today in a meeting that was clarified that as long as we are able to substantially clean and disinfect, we do not have to close schools down. We have the option to remain open. But if we take that option, we have to ensure that contact tracing has not only begun, but we've been able to locate potential cases of exposure, and that we are able to ensure thorough disinfecting and cleaning throughout the entire school building. Keep in mind, particularly at our middle school and our high school, students travel through the building from class to class, the auditorium, the cafeteria, the gym. So the risk of students exposing themselves in terms of transmission could be potentially higher, and the need for cleaning of surfaces in those areas, of course, increases because more surface areas are being used by more students during the day. And so the chart outlines the specifics. Today at our superintendent's meeting, we got further clarification that we believe is in place with the Office of Public Health. And right now, they are not recommending closures unless we have substantial numbers of students and staff who come down with COVID-19 and are positive. If there are cases of linked transmission within any school building, or if it's necessitated to have a functional closure of the building because we simply do not have enough staff able to come in and man the building. So there has been a little bit of confusion as to whether or not closures are mandatory, but the clarification that we got today seems to indicate that if we can put safe procedures in place by working with the Office of Public Health to do all of the required contact tracing within a reasonable amount of time, we do not have to hold these indications to the letter. We are, as I mentioned, in the substantial designation. It is predicted we will remain there through at least the month of December and January and potentially longer. This is basically a definition of what contact tracing is. Again, we're extraordinarily fortunate that we work very closely already with our Office of Public Health. When we learn of a suspected case, and generally we learn about that from either a staff member themselves or from a parent who notifies us that their child has symptoms, our school nurses report that to the Office of Public Health so that they can direct the family to where they can get tested. When a test case comes back as positive, they begin the process of contact tracing. We work in close conjunction with the OPH in order to identify any individuals or locations where that student might have been or with whom they've been in contact. The recommendation at that point is that the student stays home and quarantines for 14 days. And this just goes through, again, the contact tracing process, the fact that the individuals who are the contact tracers will speak with the family members or staff member in order to identify the close contacts who might have been near that individual while infectious, and then they will reach out to those known close contacts in order to try to alert them to the fact that they may have potentially been exposed to a case of COVID-19. And this just simply explains, and again, this will be on the website, the difference between quarantine and isolation. The essential difference is isolation is what occurs with individuals who are known to be positive. The recommendation is that they isolate themselves even from family members. You may have heard of celebrities or newscasters who've come down with COVID-19 who have said things like, I lived in my bedroom, food was dropped outside the door on a tray, and the individuals in the family had to wear gloves and masks even while they washed dishes or clothes belonging to the infected individual for fear of there being any spread in the home. Quarantine is more for individuals who had contact with someone but who have not yet tested positive. They're asked to stay home to ensure that they are indeed asymptomatic and test negative. And then we will also have new data with a new dashboard on our website that's going to be published shortly that one of our student service directors is working on. But this gives you an idea of where our local numbers are. Today we heard from Dr. Valerie Arkush, who is one of our commissioners at the in the Montgomery County Office of Commissioners, that we appear to be leveling off. Now, we don't know if that will be the case after Christmas and the holidays, but so far, not going into the second week after Thanksgiving yet, it appears cases are leveling off, as are hospitalizations within Montgomery County. So obviously, We hope that will remain the same. This data comes from their dashboard and shows that in comparison to many of our neighbors, we are indeed doing well, but you can also see the very troubling trend in terms of the increases in cases from just a month ago. And then, of course, these are our positivity rates. You may recall that several months ago when we talked about what were the metrics that we would use for closing schools down, the county was recommending anything between 7 and 8%. And even though we have an astronomical increase in the number of positive cases in the community in the last month, we are still way below what our neighbors are seeing. And for that reason, the county offices decided to close down schools. In order to prevent more spread, mitigation efforts were put into place over the last 2 weeks as a result of students coming home from college for the Thanksgiving holiday, obviously travel over the long Thanksgiving weekend, as well as family gatherings. So we still have another week to go. We don't have the recently published numbers for this past week yet, and it will be interesting to see whether or not enough was done in order to continue to mitigate the spread. And so for anyone wanting more information, and I repeat, this will go up on the website, I have the link to the Pennsylvania Department of Education COVID Health Guidance, which spells out all of these new procedures and protocols as I have them listed. And again, a new attestation order is now going to be signed as a result of the fact that everyone received a message today from Dr. Yannicone indicating that the plan is to move forward and to reopen our schools in a hybrid model on December 7th. So that will require her to attest to the fact, along with Dr. Taratusky, that these procedures are going to be implemented and that we very carefully monitor, beginning on Monday, December 7th, the number of cases on a rolling 14-day period that we have in each of our school buildings. So a lot of attention is going to need to be placed on keeping track of those numbers and the procedures that we have in place to help mitigate spread any further. So before I turn it over to Dr. Yannicone, who is also going to address the much anticipated issue of winter sports along with Mr. Ferraro, does anyone have any questions about anything in the attestation order? Okay, so thank you everyone. And with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Yannicone.
Thank you, Dr. Hacker. That was very comprehensive.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, Dr. Hacker. This afternoon, as Dr. Hacker mentioned, I sent a message to staff and families sharing that we plan to resume hybrid instruction on Monday, December 7th. While no instructional model is perfect, the hybrid model allows our students and their families the opportunity to choose the best option for themselves and supports the need of many of our students for connection, community, and access to educational, social, emotional, and mental health resources not available to the same degree in the virtual environment. For our administrative team and staff, the hybrid model is absolutely more challenging, but we are committed to supporting our students and their families. However, we will need the cooperation of everyone if we are to be successful, especially through the winter months. This will also be true for our students and families at the high school who have advocated for the approval of winter sports. I have submitted a motion for the board's consideration tonight, which will allow for some of our teams to begin practices on December 7th and others to be delayed until next month. Our athletic director, Joe Ferraro, is going to present an overview of the health and safety plan and to answer any questions you may have before the vote. I want to thank Mr. Ferraro publicly for the careful attention he has paid to the winter plan and for his dedication to creating a safe and supportive environment for our student athletes. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Ferraro for his presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Y. I appreciate it. I am going to go ahead and share my screen and bring up a pretty short PowerPoint presentation, and I will do my best to be brief. Everything that you guys are going to see in this presentation is pulled directly from our health and safety plan and our winter sport considerations. So these are basically the three things that we're going to go over, just some general considerations for our student athletes and our coaching staff, some scheduling pieces that we'll talk about, and then a couple of the specific sports considerations that we teased out of that winter sport consideration, just so you can kind of see some of the things that we're doing for each sport to ensure some safety for our students. So first I want to talk about masks. With the revised mask order, all of our student athletes, coaches, spectators, officials, game staff, effectively anyone in an athletic event, whether it's a practice, a game, will be required to wear masks at all times. The only exception to this is athletes that are swimming, actively swimming in the pool. They will not be forced to wear a mask. And obviously, if a student athlete or coach is grabbing a drink of water, they will be able to remove their mask. We just ask that they're socially distanced while doing so. Another thing that we're going to continue that we did in the fall and we were very successful in is monitoring and screening. So we screened every athlete and every coach, effectively anyone that attended an athletic event, again, whether it's a practice or a game, gets screened. And that screen includes a temperature check. It also includes signs and symptoms. So every student athlete, coach will scan a QR code and it'll bring up a little Google form on their phone for them to be able to fill out a symptom questionnaire. It'll also ask questions if they've been in close contact with anyone that is suspected or confirmed to be sick with COVID-19. It also asks travel questions if they have traveled recently within the past 14 days to any of the states that are on that recommended quarantine list. And again, the coaches will scan the kids before starting any practice, any game, anything like that. Another thing that some social distancing things, there's a lot of things that we've implemented that we implemented over the fall that we will continue to do in the winter. We will use the locker rooms in the winter. That's a change from the fall just because the nature of the winter season is going to be a little bit more challenging to avoid. We are encouraging our student athletes to, arrive at practice ready to go. So our basketball players, if they can wear shorts under their sweatpants or under a sweatshirt or something like that, ready for practice, ready for a game, we are asking them to do that. But with sports like swimming, it's a little bit more challenging for students to wear their swimsuit all day. It's not an expectation for us. So we are going to limit the amount of people that are in the locker rooms. We're asking them to, quickly enter the room, get changed, wash their hands up, and get out of the locker room so that their teammates can get in there and get changed. And then again, Montgomery County has put some limitations in place on gathering limits for our venues. We had to apply for a waiver to increase those, which we've done, and those numbers are stated in our health and safety plan. So we will abide by all of those limitations in all of our athletic venues. Just some cleaning and disinfecting things that we're going to do and continue to do is, all of our athletic venues have what we call a sanitation station at them. Most have two, and what that is a large jug of hand sanitizer, disinfectant wipes, and other cleaning supplies. So that way students, coaches, and whoever's there really have access to any of the EPA approved cleaners and hand sanitizers so that throughout the course of practice, kids can sanitize their hands or wipe down a piece of equipment. The biggest difference between indoor and outdoor sports is obviously we have to rely on our ventilation system and not so much natural air. So our HVAC will operate as normal. And then an additional measure that we're going to take is we're going to prop open all the internal and external doors throughout the course of practice to try to promote some more airflow, as well as staggering practices a little bit more than we typically do to just try to circulate some new air into each of those venues between teams. Hydration, I put this in here because I always think that this is important. Plus, it's the only time that our kids are really going to have their masks off at every level. So students are going to have to bring their own water bottles. They're going to have to label those so that they're clearly identifiable. We will no longer provide, communal water bottles and things like that. And, we're asking our coaches to stagger breaks throughout the course of a practice so that they're not releasing all 20 or 30 kids in their roster at one time so everyone's standing around all together. So our coaches are going to do a pretty good job at at making sure, it's small groups that are going off to take a break, and then they'll be able to socially distance while they have their masks off. So I think for spectators is effectively it's the same. They have to abide by all the same rules and regulations that our student athletes and our coaching staff have to abide by. So they will be forced to wear masks. They'll be forced to social distance. A point in here is that the Suburban One League has voted to extend the prohibition of visiting spectators during the winter season. So that means that no visiting spectators will be attending our home games. It also means that our families will not be able to attend away games this season. And again, we are going to abide by those limits in the Montgomery County has imposed. And we, myself and my administrative assistant, have actually taped off and marked out all the seats in the gyms and in the pool to ensure that all those seats are socially distanced, so that when we have spectators in our gym, they will be more than 6 feet apart during any of our contests. Some scheduling considerations. I just think that this is pretty important here. Suburban One League has voted to start all winter sports on December 7th, this upcoming Monday. PIAA bylaws state that we have to have 15 days of practice before we're allowed to have a competition. Can't have 2 practices in a day. It has to be 15 days, which would put our first eligible competition the week of the 28th, assuming that we're able to complete all those days of practice. Suburban One League has agreed to permit non-divisional competition starting the week of the 28th and divisional games, the week of January 11th, which effectively means that our season could start as early as, our competitive season could start as early as the 28th, but will start on January 11th. And then the end of the regular season is currently slated for February 13th. So it's going to be a sprint. We feel like we can get as many contests in as we can safely. And then this is kind of the stuff that's all pulled from that sport-specific document for the winter season. I teased out a few. I'm going to run through a couple of these sports pretty quick just because I don't want to take up too much time. For basketball, each player is going to have, our coaches will sanitize each basketball before and after practice. Each player will get their own basketball throughout the course of the practice. And while the kids are on the bench, they will be socially distanced and in the bleachers. Games are going to look a little bit different than they have in the past. But we've spaced things out so that way our kids are distanced while they're at rest. Swimming, really for swimming, we're following the USA swim guidelines for almost everything. They put out some comprehensive plans, and those are attached in our health and safety plan. They have practice layouts for 6-lane pools, 8-lane pools, how to socially distance kids while they're in the water. We're also going to abide by the recommendations from the CDC in terms of chlorine levels and things like that, which is something that we were already doing in the fall and we will just continue to do in the winter. Also, the PIAA has, and this is a pretty common thread, the PIAA has approved the use of virtual swim meets, so we can use those as needed. If a competitor is not willing to travel to a swim meet. For indoor track, this is the walking contradiction because indoor track is now going to be outdoors. So the PIAA has approved outdoor meets, so we will practice and compete outdoors for the winter track season. For cheer, again, the PIAA has approved virtual cheer competitions, so we can use those as necessary. And then just another note that, typically if you've been to one of our basketball games, the cheerleaders typically sit directly behind our basketball team. This year, they're going to be on the opposite side of the gym, socially distanced, so throughout like 2 sets of bleachers, just to try to keep them at bay. And again, they'll get their own sets of pom-poms and things like that, so they're not sharing too much equipment. For wrestling, it is our recommendation, just due to the nature of the sport, that we are going to postpone wrestling until January, which will effectively make our first competition no sooner than January 26th, because I think there's a holiday between the 4th and the 26th. When wrestling starts back up, our wrestlers will be wrestling in small pods of the same 3 to 4 kids. And effectively what that means is that if I'm a wrestler and I'm in the 180-pound weight class, I'll be wrestling 1 weight class above and 1 weight class below, just to ensure that we have, as limited contact as we can for our wrestling season. And then something that we've always done is we disinfect our wrestling mats before and after practice on a daily basis, so that will just continue. Unified bocce, this is my last sport that I'm going to talk to you guys about. Unified bocce, really we're just waiting for the Special Olympics. Special Olympics kind of tells us how bocces look. We're waiting on Special Olympics to finalize their health and safety plans and their scheduling. So at this point, we're gonna postpone until we hear back from the Special Olympics until we get that all started. So that's all I have for you guys today, and I hope I didn't run through that too fast. If you guys have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Joe, thank you so much. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Ferraro?
Just a clarification, are the cheerleaders going to be wearing masks as well when they're in basketball games?
Absolutely, yeah. So everyone at all times, except for swimmers when they're actively in the pool.
Thank you.
One comment and one question. The comment is, I wanted you to know, Joe, that my personal bias is like, I don't want anyone playing sports. I don't want to be around anyone, but it's my personal fear, right? And I do see the benefits of winter sports as well. However, when I read through your documents, your presentation, the safety plan in detail, the level of care and thought that has gone into the planning gives me a level of comfort and assurance in how we're moving forward. My question for you, though, even when we hear from the students with personal promises to comply, we are all humans, and we see when there are folks around us who are not complying with rules and regs. How are we actively overseeing compliance with all of these guidelines that have been so carefully crafted?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So for all of our student athletes, they have to sign 2 documents prior to starting. And the first document is an acknowledgement form, which effectively says that they understand there's an increased risk in playing a sport. And the second form is a student athlete compact. And what that is really, it's a social contract between the student and the school district, effectively saying, we're going to play by the rules. We're going to abide by these guidelines. And if not, I could very well forfeit my own position or my team's season. Now, in terms of oversight, I would like to say that I get to go home and see my wife, but I effectively live at the school, so I'm at a lot of the practices. I'm almost at every game. I'm working hand in hand with the coaching staff at all times, and if we see something that it's not quite right, it's a conversation between me and the coach at first, or it's a conversation between me and a kid. Hey, make sure you always have your mask on. Hey, make sure you're not standing too close to these people. Coaching staff is extremely diligent. I was really proud of our coaches in the fall and the way that they handled themselves, and I'm assuming, and I'm very hopeful that our winter coaching staff will do just as good of a job. I hope that answered your question.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. I do appreciate your work on the plan, and I think the presentation was very helpful for me. I did have a lot of questions about how that was going to be carried out for winter sports. You mentioned that there was a waiver that you applied for in terms of the number of individuals that were permitted in a certain area. Could you share a little bit more of information about that? Why was that, and what areas would that be?
Yeah, so when the state came out with the occupancy calculators, effectively saying 20%, if your occupancy limit is anywhere from 0 to 2,000, you can have 20% of that number. Well, the state put that out, and then Montgomery County said, we're still at 25 unless you apply to increase. What I did was I applied to increase in our pool, in our Navy gymnasium, which is our main gymnasium, and our Steel gymnasium, which is our auxiliary gym. And that's based on square footage and seat counts. So effectively, like our Navy gym, I know that one offhand because it's a round number. It gets us up to about 180 people in that space. Our occupancy is typically 900, but 20% of that is 180. So we had to apply for those. We had to show a good deal of the things, very similar to what I just presented now, all of the measures that we're taking to ensure safety to the county. So we had to apply to the Montgomery County Board of Health, and then they had approved us to increase those numbers.
And with that 180, does that cover all of the student athletes, coaches, everybody, and including spectators?
It does. So that is everyone in a space. That's the people on the gym floor, the people in the stands, the people that are making sure that the people have tickets at the door, the officials. That is everyone and anyone.
Okay. All right. And then just another question about basketball. I noticed that for wrestling, students would be practicing in pods. Would that be the same for basketball also?
So basketball roster is a little bit smaller. They're not going to necessarily be in pods just because there is, just due to the nature of the sport, there are going to be some times where you have to do some 5-on-5 type scrimmages just to simulate a game. But I would love it if for our 90-minute practice, all 90 minutes we're gung-ho and ready to go. But the truth of the matter is, most of the time, there's a lot of time that's, 5-on-0 where you're installing an offense. So there's not too much action where they're taking a 20-minute period to go over a play. So it's really just 5 kids on the court kind of walking through, hey, this is where I need to be on this play and things like that. So it's not necessarily pods, but I don't think there's not nearly as much contact in a practice as there would be in wrestling.
Okay. And do we know how many of our kids, our student athletes, are hybrid students?
I actually do not have that number, but I can find it for you.
Okay. And just the reason I ask is in terms of exposure and exposure to other students, it would be interesting to know.
I'll make a note. Thanks.
Are there any other questions from other members of the board?
I do have a question. I'm curious to know, as we approach the decision to decide whether we're going to allow competition, specifically for basketball, which is a lot of contact, as you mentioned, when there's a game, what kind of contact are we going to have with the other districts and the other teams that we're playing to know if they're being as safe as our students are?
Yeah, so that's a great question too. So the members of the Suburban 1 League, the teams that we're playing, the divisional teams that we're playing, we meet on a weekly basis. All the athletic directors and typically the principals get lumped into that now more than ever. All of our health and safety plans are almost identical at this point. We all abide by the same sports-specific considerations because they're derived straight from the PIAA's return to competition guidelines. So all of the schools that we'll be playing, since we're not going to reach out and play schools that are not member leagues of the Suburban 1, all of those schools are going to be following very similar health and safety procedures.
And how many schools are there?
So there are 24 Suburban 1 League member schools. There are 6 schools are within our division, so 5 opponents for us, and then there are another 6 schools in our conference. It's really 11 schools that we have the potential for.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Farrar, can I ask a question?
Of course.
I'm not entirely sure how to articulate this. I hope I get it right. I'm not asking for identities, to be sure, but what percentage, I guess, of the winter athletes are seniors who might be looking to play or participate in athletics at the collegiate level, and are you aware, and I realize I'm asking 2 questions, I'm sorry, I'm just kind of babbling. Are you aware of any protocol or changes that are protocols or changes that are in place at least the state university level in terms of scholarships and things like that?
So not in terms of scholarships and a percentage. I say that on an average year we have about 12 to 15 kids that are continuing their journey on to play at the next level, which is great for us. I know that the NCAA is doing a lot to work with kids in terms of eligibility through the clearinghouse, trying to make sure that that there's some flexibility with credits that they need to accomplish in order to get to the next level. They're extending seasons, so I think it's going to be more challenging now more than ever for our kids to be able to be successful at the next level, just because they're going to have to compete against more students that maybe got a 5th year in college of eligibility just because the NCAA has shut down a couple things throughout this course. So I hope that answers.
No, it does. Thanks. So at least some accommodations are being made?
Yes.
As far as you're aware? Okay. Thank you.
Hi, Joe. This is Tamita. Thank you so much for all of your work going into the health and safety plan, and your presentation today was very helpful to understand a little bit better and make some of those things a little bit clearer, as the plan was very substantive. So, thank you so much for all your work on, on that. This is a very serious topic, and we understand that, we understand how important it is, and the needs of the students and meeting the needs of the students. If there is, so there's two things I'd like to clarify. When it comes to the waiver that that you talked about for additional, I guess I'm just confused between whether the waiver was for spectators, as I thought that spectators were not being involved in any of the sports, or do I have that? Am I not clear on that component?
So we will permit spectators for home contests, and we will pre-distribute those tickets. So, for our gym, really to run a basketball game, the numbers creep up on you, but there's probably close to 110 people to run a basketball game. So realistically, if we could pack the rest of the seats in the gym, we have maybe 70 tickets to give out. The reason that we applied for the waiver is because in order for us to hold a practice, with the number being 25, it would be very challenging for us to hold just an ordinary practice, let alone a game. Many of our rosters exceed the 25 number. So for us to have a basketball practice, we might have 35 guys on a basketball team. So we would have to split that up if we didn't apply for that waiver. So when we applied for that waiver, it wasn't only just for our practices, but for our games. And then with that would allow a few spectators. We're not going to sell tickets this year for our games. It was in the slides, but I jumped over it. We're not going to sell tickets for our games. We're going to pre-distribute those tickets beforehand to say, hey, senior families, you can have 2 tickets or something like that. We still have to iron out exactly how many seats we have. That's going to depend on the opponent's roster, our rosters, things like that.
And so the public who would be attending, those who receive tickets, in terms of the screening measures and the form, and the screening processes, is that the same for spectators that are receiving the tickets to attend these events as it is for the athletes or those participating in the sport?
It's ever so slightly different. Montgomery County does require us to keep a registry of names. And in that, we have to have contact information for those people that attend. We do a temperature screen for those individuals. We do ask a symptom list. It's all the same questions. It's just every team has a sport-specific form so that we have a running document. It's a really good attendance list for us. Every day we can say, hey, these are the 25 people that were at practice. So yes, the screening form is the same. It's just a different, every game has its own form so that, hey, on January 11th, these were the people that were in attendance. And on January 15th, these were the people that were in attendance. So it's the same screening, just different forms for each game.
So if there's the potential for, or the need to do contact tracing, having that specific dated information will help in that regard.
Yeah, Montgomery County requires us to do that. So yes.
Okay. Thank you so much. Greatly appreciate and appreciate all the work you did for that.
Thank you.
Does anyone have any other questions?
I don't have a question, but I do want to add that I do appreciate all the work and thought that has gone into this. And I just want to say, for me personally, and for the public that's in attendance, I think that I really do want the kids to be able to play. I really do. But I do feel like our priority right now is to get them back into school and get them back into hybrid and make that a success. So I feel pretty confident in starting practices, but I'm still very hesitant as we go through the next couple of weeks when I think about competition, especially with basketball, because I know that there's a lot of contact. I know they're going to be wearing masks, but my son played on the freshman team last year and they were all over each other. So I just do want to be transparent and express my concern about that. But again, to let everyone know that I do want the kids to be able to play. We just have to make sure that we're looking at this on a week-by-week basis and assessing the situation as we move forward.
Gretchen, I just want to add at this point that your concerns obviously are duly noted, and based on the questions that all of the board members who asked questions posed and Joe's responses, this is a very challenging thing to think about. And I know that the board members are trying very, very hard to weigh the wants and the desires of the parents and the students who clearly want to play. And that has also been very, very well articulated by those students and by the families who've sent in emails. But I know that the board members feel a tremendous obligation and responsibility to ensure our students and staff members stay safe. So here, like the budget, we're balancing differing priorities and wants and needs. And there's no simple answer to any of this. And that is why the motion does read in part, this motion authorizes the administration to modify or cancel at any time any athletic activity, practice, or competition based on COVID-19 cases, data, or concerns. So I just wanted to assure everyone that I think having this caveat in the motion that the board will vote on allows Joe and his coaches and staff to make the best decision moving forward based on what they are seeing. I also truly believe when we put the compact into place, that set the bar for students and families in terms of what they were signing off on. And you heard several of the students mention this evening, they were very, very careful because of either themselves or family members, and they wanted to protect the integrity of those sport activities. We hope that will be the case, but again, the motion that is before the board this evening protects all of you in terms of knowing your responsibility and obligation, and it alerts the community and our players and their families that if indeed there are breaches or problems that arise, that we can shut down at any particular time. So Joe, thank you so much again for a spectacular job. That was, as you heard, exceptionally helpful to all of the board members. And if we don't have any further questions at this time, I believe we can move to the agenda.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Farrar. That was spectacular.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to thank Dr. Hacker, Dr. Yannicone, and Mr. Ferraro for the 3 very helpful presentations this evening. I know that there were lots of questions on behalf of the board. We did request a lot of the information so that we could make informed decisions, and I appreciate the time that you've all spent to gather the information that we've requested. Thanks. All right, new business, personnel. The Board of School Directors approves the following personnel as presented in the attachment: administrative personnel, certificated personnel, support personnel, temporary personnel, extra pay for extra responsibilities, and conference workshop attendance. Is there a motion?
Motion.
And a second?
Second.
Any comments or questions? Okay, Mr. King?
As the motion has been read and seconded, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries.
Number 2, authorization to release preliminary 2021-2022 budget. The Board of School Directors approves the release of the 2021-2022 preliminary general operating budget and authorizes and directs the administration to publicly advertise its intent to adopt the preliminary budget at least 10 days prior to the meeting so scheduled, provide it for public review at least 20 days prior to that proposed meeting, and file to PDE for exceptions following its adoption. Is there a motion?
Motion.
In a second?
Second.
Any comments or questions? Okay. Mr. King?
As the motion has been read and seconded, all in favor say aye.
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 All opposed? Motion carries.
Number 3, Interscholastic Winter Athletics Program. The Board of School Directors approves the School District of Springfield Township's revised health and safety plan for the 2020-2021 winter athletic season. This motion authorizes the administration to modify or cancel at any time any athletic activity, practice, or competition based on current COVID-19 cases, data, or concerns. Is there a motion?
Motion.
And a second?
Second.
Any comments or questions? Okay, Mr. King?
As the motion has been read and seconded, all in favor say aye.
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 All opposed? Motion carries.
Number 4, part-time independent contractors. The Board of School Directors approves the part-time independent contractors agreements beginning July 1, 2020 for speech, social skills, human relationships, and vision orientation and mobility services. Is there a motion?
Motion.
And a second?
Second.
Any comments or questions? Okay, Mr. King?
The motion has been read and seconded. All in favor say aye.
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 All opposed? Excuse me. All opposed? Motion carries.
Okay. Are there any public comments on non-agenda items? If you choose to speak, please use the hand raise feature and please state where you're located in the township. Okay. Doesn't appear that there are any comments at this time. Is there anything in the chat?
Chat is clear.
Okay. All right, thank you. Future meeting dates. There's an interim board meeting on January 5th at 7 p.m., which would be a virtual meeting. That is a tentative date. And there's a regular school board meeting scheduled for January 19th, 2021, actually, and it's January 5th, 2021, and January 19th, 2021 at 7 p.m., both virtual meetings. I want to thank Dr. Hacker and Mr. King and let them know that we are sad that this is their last board meeting, but happy for them and want to thank them for their service and their support.
Thank you so much, Karen. And I'll just take a moment to say, I know I've said this in many different settings within the past couple of weeks, but it's truly been an honor to serve the community of Springfield Township. It's been one of the highlights of my life to have worked with all of you, to our many wonderful families in the township, parents, guardians, community members, family members, students, all of our wonderful staff, my fabulous administrative team, and of course, all of you, the board. By my count, this is about number 364 of all the board meetings I've had to attend over the years. And I have to say, these last 8.5 years of board meetings, while at times a little bit challenging, have really been the easiest of my career. And I want to take this opportunity now that I've had the chance to thank all of you, and especially my partner, Ken King, to offer my congratulations and the best of luck to Damian Johnston, our new assistant superintendent. I hired Damian. I know full well what she's capable of, and I know she's going to do a phenomenal job in her new role, as well as mentor whoever the incoming director of student services will be. And of course, best of luck to Mary Jo. We've had the opportunity over the past several months, mostly due to the wisdom of this board, who were smart enough to ensure they began a search process very quickly after I announced my retirement, so that there would indeed be significant transition time, no matter who my successor was going to be. And I think they chose wisely. Mary Jo and I have been working very closely every single week for the past many months since she was appointed back in July. And I know she's ready. I know she has some trepidations and she's a bit anxious, as any new superintendent would be, but she has the necessary and the requisite leadership skills to do an amazing job. And as I told her, my phone number and my email are on speed dial. The best of luck, Mary Jo, and to all of you on the board. May God bless you all. May you continue to make wonderful decisions on behalf of our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hacker.
Thanks, Dr. Hacker.
Here's to Saturdays.
If I may, first, if you're going to retire, do not follow Dr. Hacker in any remarks made in a public meeting. So I will be brief. I just really echo a lot of what Dr. Hacker said. I feel very fortunate and to end my career at Springfield. It is truly a remarkable place to work. I appreciate all of you, the administrators, the board, the entire staff. It's just a district that is clicking in all components and aspect of it. Even the community, the township, the relationships that are here. I'm internally grateful that while I was sitting in my office at Eastern, Dr. Hacker popped her head in and said hello. And that was the beginning. And I was very fortunate that I could continue to work with her again in Springfield and with all of you. And so I thank you very much. And I wish all of you tremendous success in the future, as I know you will be very successful. And good luck to the new SUP, MJY, DDJ, to you as well, to everybody else. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Ken.
Thank you.
All right, well, I think that does it. We are now officially adjourned, and I wish everyone in the community happy holidays and a safe safe December and January and winter season. Take care.